Hi, I'm Thomas Bowles, Prince William County Agricultural Extension Agent. Welcome to our video.
Good morning and welcome. Today's topic is on the spotted lanternfly. I'm Thomas Bowles, the Extension Agent here in Prince William County. And let's talk about the spotted lanternfly. Before we get into that though, just a reminder, Virginia Cooperative Extension is a partnership between Virginia Tech and Virginia State Universities. And our mission is to get out unbiased research-based information to the public. Here in Prince William County, we have programs in agriculture and natural resources, financial education, parenting education, nutrition education, and youth development through 4-H. So what is the spotted lanternfly? Well, it's not a fly. It's an invasive from Asia. It's a member of the plant hopper family. It's a really beautiful insect, but it is a destructive pest of commercial crops. It doesn't bite or sting, so it's not a health hazard to humans, but it is a nuisance and potentially harmful to ornamentals, in addition to being a problem for crops. So if we look at the spotted lanternfly life cycle in Virginia, right now we're over here on the left with eggs. Eggs will be hatching probably mid to late April, and they will develop into nymphs. There are 4 nymph stages. The first 3 are black with white dots. The last stage is red with black edging and white dots. And that'll happen later in the summer. And then as these begin to metamorphosize, they will turn into the adult. And the adult is about 1 inch long. And it's, like I said, it's a plant hopper. And so it hops really well, doesn't fly terribly well, but it can fly. Another picture of the life cycle. The difference in the instars or the nymph stages, the first, second, and third, like I say, all look alike. The difference is the size. They get progressively bigger, and they turn into the black, red, and white ones, and then they become the adults. And so right now we're at this stage. Again, this is eggs. Most of the time, eggs are covered, and so they look like these mud smears. Sometimes, however, they will be uncovered, and they'll, look in these rows. And you can see that they blend in really well with trees and bark, but they can be laid on a variety of surfaces. Some lookalikes. Generally speaking, lichen is the big lookalike that egg masses get mistaken for, because in some cases it is hard to tell. The uncovered eggs tend to look a lot like cankerworms or wheel bug eggs, but sometimes Chinese mantis egg cases, gypsy moth egg cases, and tent caterpillars are sometimes confused with them. Again, nymph stage, you can see these are really, really pretty insects. It's a shame they're so destructive. And when we look at possible lookalikes here in Virginia, oak leaf hopper nymphs, wheel bug nymphs, and assassin bug nymphs are often confused. But if you look closely, they have a distinctive shape, and especially in the 4th instar, they are distinctive in their coloring. Here's the adult stage with wings open and closed. Again, it's a very nice looking insect, but it is destructive. And again, they're only about 1 inch long in spite of the big blow up of the picture here. And they can be mistaken for a number of different things: tiger moths, oak tree hoppers, buck moths, leopard moths, Alanthus webworms, and Bella moths. How did they get here? Well, they're native to Asia, and they hitched a ride as egg masses on decorative stone that was imported into Pennsylvania. And they spread by hitchhiking on trucks and rail cars. They can travel that way in all life stages, but what we see a lot of is the eggs get laid on a surface, and then when they hatch, they're in a different place. And so you can see in the picture here, this worker is inspecting. They found an egg case here in the undercarriage of this truck. And so they're going to have to scrape that off and destroy those eggs. And when you're inspecting your vehicle, you want to make sure that you're checking all parts of the vehicle, underneath the wheel well, bed liners. They can get into all kinds of crevices. And again, you want to be checking for the right life stage during the right period of time. We have seen spotted lanternflies come in as adults on Christmas trees, for example, and you kind of have to look into the tree really to spot them. So it's hard to find, but anything or anytime you're in an area that has spotted lanternflies, you want to inspect your vehicles before you leave. They have lots of preferred hosts. Over 70 have been identified. Some of their favorites include the tree of heaven, fruit trees, grapes, and hardwood ornamentals. Tree of heaven, at some stage in their lifetime, it seems like they need to feed on tree of heaven at least for some time. Unfortunately, tree of heaven, another invasive, is very widespread. And one of the ways that we deal with spotted lanternflies is trying to control Ailanthus. So here we have lots of adults in a grape vineyard, and they're sucking up juices, and they're pooping all over the grapes, and it's not very pleasant. So tree of heaven is, like I say, a common invasive, unfortunately. It is sometimes mistaken for several natives, including staghorn sumac, winged sumac, black walnut, and butternut. It's really important if you are considering controlling Ailanthus or tree of heaven on your property that you properly identify the tree. Otherwise, you're going to run into a problem that is this. This is taken from a farm in Nokesville that has a right-of-way for utilities. Utility company came through. They're thinking they're doing the right thing. They're going to spray all the Ailanthus. There was no Ailanthus there. They sprayed all the black walnut. And so you have black walnut trees that are dying. So make sure you identify Ailanthus correctly before you try and treat for it. One of the habits we see with spotted lanternfly is they swarm in large numbers to feed, and this causes all sorts of issues: plant death, reduction in hardiness, reduction in yield, dieback, defoliation, wilting, oozing, all sorts of different things. They also produce what's referred to as honeydew, which is their frass or their poop. It's sweet and sticky, and this invites other problems. Here we've got steps in a residential situation that are covered with this slick, sticky goo. So one of the secondary effects of this honeydew is it causes sooty mold, which is this blackish sort of fungus that grows on things. It impairs the plant's ability to photosynthesize, and it also makes fruit unsellable and unusable. So that's a big problem for our commercial producers. The other things that it can do is it can attract nuisance insects like wasps and yellow jackets. They're attracted to that sweet, sticky frass, and they're going to show up. So sometimes they can be a problem as well. What can you do? Well, you can try and remove the tree of heaven from your property if you have any. During the right time of year, you're going to inspect for egg masses. They can be on trees, outdoor furniture, vehicles, siding, all sorts of things. And you're going to check your vehicle when you're going in and out of infested areas. What else can I do? You can report it. Here in Virginia, if you are in the greater Prince William area, you're going to use this QR code in the upper right to report it. If you're in Loudoun County, you're going to use this website. If you're outside of Prince William and Loudoun and outside of the quarantine zone, and I'll show you the quarantine zone in a second, you should report it to your local extension office. Inside the quarantine zone area and even outside, if you see spotted lanternfly, kill it. So right now the quarantine zone is Frederick, Winchester, Clark, and Warren. in the northern part of the state, but it's possible that by the end of the summer, there could be other counties under quarantine as well. What else can you do? You can decide if and when you want to treat chemically for spotted lanternfly, and that's based on the number present, whether they are on a preferred host and are likely to remain, or whether they're on a plant that they probably aren't going to feed on and they're going to move away, the size and the health of the plant, the presence or absence of other hosts in the landscape, and what stage of life is present. If you decide to treat, start with the least toxic option. Again, our least toxic option is to start with removing preferred hosts. On one hand, that sounds great. On the other hand, when we think about some of their preferred hosts, that can be problematic. For example, they like maple trees. If you've got a nice stately maple in your front yard, you're not going to remove it just to deal with spotted lanternfly in all likelihood. So sometimes we can't remove all of the preferred hosts. But we do want to scout for the pests in the landscape to make sure that if it shows up, we can sort of nip it in the bud. During the right time of year, you're going to be checking surfaces for egg masses. If you find egg masses, what you need to do is scrape them into jars of rubbing alcohol or hand sanitizer to kill the eggs, or you can cover them with dormant oil. Now, dormant oil should only be used in late winter before bud break. Some oils you can use during the growing season, but you need to test them on a few branches to see if there's going to be an injury to the tree. Don't use oil sprays as a preventative because it just isn't going to work. They're going to lay their eggs regardless. If you find them in the nymph or adult stage, you want to kill them. They can be squashed or smashed. It's not terribly effective because although they are pore flyers, they can jump really well. They are leaf hoppers after all. And if they're present in large numbers, it's hard to kill all of them that way. You can vacuum them using a shop vac with some water and a little dish soap in the barrel. That'll help drown them, suffocate them. Those are non-toxic options. You can trap them using mesh bands, another non-toxic option. If you decide to spray chemically, you have the choice of contact insecticides or systemic insecticides, which are applied to the plants. The problem with these is they are very broad spectrum and therefore can hurt non-target species. And they also can be very expensive. Organic control-wise, neem oil and natural pyrethrins can be used, but repeated applications are probably going to be necessary as the pesticide wears off. Populations will move back in. So these are contact insecticides. Again, they are broad spectrum. They're all highly toxic to bees and other pollinators. Systemic insecticide choices are listed here. Remember, if you're doing a soil drench, they need to be done at the base of the tree, but not if there are flowering plants planted at the base of the tree. Everything should be used after the shrub or tree has finished flowering because, again, we don't want to hurt pollinators. And understand that insecticides and systemic sprays are not effective against egg masses. Now, you may want to have a professional do this because in some cases there's some specialized equipment needed. And if you're spraying, particularly spraying over your head, you might want to let a certified applicator with the correct protective equipment do that job instead of doing it yourself and having pesticides rain down on you. And again, avoid spraying before and while plants are flowering. So here's some management options and at what point of the year that you would use them. You wouldn't necessarily use all of these, but these are all options. And it's based on what stage of life we're dealing with. So our action summary is we're going to keep our trees and plants as healthy as possible, because healthier plants are less likely to attract spotted lanternfly. We're going to report sightings if possible. We're also going to smash or smush the eggs and the adults and nymphs and destroy egg masses. We're going to stay up to date on all the quarantines and we're going to check for vehicles and other materials when we're leaving infested areas. We're going to manage small populations as best we can. And we're going to evaluate conditions to see if we need to use chemical controls as a follow-up. The things to remember, if you find them in Prince William County, City Manassas Park, use the QR code and report them. We're not going to eradicate the spotted lanternfly. We're going to have to learn to manage them. Think about Japanese beetles. We can't kill them all. It's just not possible. So we have to be able to manage them. And it's going to be a yearly thing that we're going to be managing these as we move forward. But research is ongoing. And so universities are looking for better ways to deal with this. And hopefully we'll have some more effective but less toxic options in the future. So here's some selective resources. Spotted lanternfly page from Virginia Cooperative Extension, the publication Best Management Practices for Spotted Lanternflies in Yards and Landscapes, and all of those chemical controls I showed you earlier are listed there. VDAC's, Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, has a plant industry services page, and that has information on spotted lanternfly, and also Penn State's Spotted Lanternfly Management Guide. Penn State's been dealing with this 3 or 4 years longer than we have, so they've got a little bit of experience there, and they've got some good information on their page as well. With that, I will take questions. There are any?
The only question we had is if the lanternfly lays its eggs on metal, how do the larvae move to the plants to feed?
We're starting with an egg mass on metal. When they hatch into crawling, jumping nymphs. It's not a larval stage like a caterpillar or a maggot. It's an actual nymph that can crawl and jump, and so that once they've hatched in this form, they will move to somewhere where they can feed. As I say, research is ongoing. We expect towards the end of the month, weather dependent, we're going to start seeing the young nymphs emerge. Right now in Prince William County, most of what we've found has been kind of in well, not really mid-county, more by the Prince William the Manassas Airport. There have been a few reports down in Woodbridge and a few reports up in Gainesville, but it seems like most of the spotted lanternfly right now are concentrated in and around the area in between Manassas Airport and Route 28.
Thomas, is there any place on the web that they publicize what all the new spottings?
We haven't quite worked that out. Ideally, what's going to happen is, so Extension is working with VDACs and working with Forest Pest Management of Prince William County. And so ideally, Forest Pest Management is going to have a GIS page where they will have updated maps of where we're spotting them in the county.
Yeah.
I'm not sure when that's supposed to go online.
Yeah. There's a couple more questions. How did the removal efforts go near the airport?
They've gone okay. And so part of the problem is, and I don't know if I've got a good picture of it, I probably don't, but you can only scrape as high as you can reach. And so we've got a lot of wooded areas where we can't get to the egg masses to scrape them. So, you know, we're trying to reduce numbers that will hatch, but we're not able to get all of them.
Can they survive on an airplane?
That's a good question. I would suppose it would depend on what stage of life they're in. I would suppose as an egg, yes.
That's scary.
Thomas, I think the question is coming from the fact that most of the lanternflies are concentrated around the airport and around the Manassas airport. And the thing that we have to keep in mind is that's really a transportation corridor. The
Yes.
rail lines run right through there. So yeah, they're not coming in on planes.
Yeah, we know that, well, two things. One, they are much closer to the rail line than they are to the actual airport. And two, we're almost guaranteed we know exactly how they got here. So up in Winchester, where they first found the spotted lanternfly, there's a decorative rock business. Right next to that business are a number of rail lines, including some sidings. And those sidings are owned by a number of food manufacturers, including Kraft and others. And I'm not pointing fingers, but you know, they keep rail cars there pretty consistently for a long time. And what we pretty much are sure has happened is spotted lanternflies from that area of Winchester laid eggs on rail cars. And those rail cars happen to be near the VRE station in Bristow when they decided to hatch. We almost can guarantee that they did not come by plane. The big concern has always been following them down rail lines and following them down interstate lines, because that seems to be the most likely routes for them to travel. We're actually very worried about those in the 66 corridor. We're very worried about that because there's a Lampus lining 66 from Strasburg all the way into Arlington.
There's nothing else in the chat.
Okay, well, if we're out of questions, just like to remind everybody, we're getting into lawn season. If you're thinking about your lawn this spring, consider our Best Lawns program. A master gardener will come out and measure, sample your yard, evaluate your yard. When soil tests come back, they'll get you a customized fertilizer plan, and if needed, a liming plan, as well as give you control options for the problem areas in your yard. If you're interested, please let us know. Please contact the office at mastergardener@pwcgov.org. Thank you again for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please let us know with your questions, your comments, and suggestions for other classes and videos. For more information on lawns and gardens, contact us at mastergardener@pwcgov.org. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.